Hello and welcome to the CEO Show with the #1 ranking CEO magazine worldwide. I'm your host, Nick Vaidya. Today we have as our guest an incredibly successful executive, Tiger N.V. Tyagarajan, the CEO of Genpact. Started in 1997, today Genpact boasts 62,000 employees and Tiger has played an instrumental role right since the inception. Now, despite our 2 pre-flight checks, we had a little bit of difficulty, so we are going to be running on our backup system. Nonetheless, what you will hear is going to be worth its weight in gold, and I know that. So let us welcome Tiger to our show. A very warm welcome to you, Tiger. You've been with Genpact pretty much through its inception, responsible for if not responsible, at least, right through the diversification and growth strategy of Genpact, right at the center of the globalization trend and the big data trend. So you probably have an insight that a lot of people don't have. And so that's the things that I wanted to hear from you, your perspective, from your perch. What do you see happening in the space, in what's now Genpact and what it originally started out? If I'm not wrong, in 1997, when it was started, it was basically for GE and mostly for back office data analysis. Is that right?
Yeah, so when we started, it was 1997. You're right. It was actually originally for GE Capital, which is the financial services arm of GE. And it was really for back office services, simple stuff to begin with, and very simple data analytics stuff to begin with. So those are the 2: processing of mortgage applications, credit card applications, etc., and data analytics of a very simple kind. And then over the years, until 2005, kept doing work of a similar nature with all the G Capital and GE businesses, and then subsequently kept moving up the value chain into more complex work. By the time we spun off into an independent company in 2005, we were 15,000 people doing a range of services from very simple to very complex, spread across, at that time, 4 countries in the world from where we provided services. And that was what we were in 2005.
And now you have 24 back-end service centers, over 700 clients, right?
No, we have 75 plus delivery centers.
Really?
In 20 countries. So the delivery centers are located in 20 countries, but there are 75 centers. Some countries have many centers. China being an example, India being another example, Philippines is the third example, etc. And we serve 700 clients, but I would call out probably about 200 of them as being multi-geography, multi-services, complex delivery. And the other 400 to 500 are specific point solutions for specific capabilities in a specific spot.
And so it's not data analysis anymore. You've gone up the value chain. And I understand it's not truly a consulting company, but it's neither a IT services vendor. So what exactly, in what space are you operating? I had a little hard time trying to figure that one out.
Right. So the way to think about us, Nick, is the following. We started our journey with GE basically doing what I would call day-to-day processes for a business. So you can pick any kind of process. So a mortgage business processes mortgage applications. Manufacturing business pays supplier bills. Every business has to manage their books of accounts. At the end of each month, you got to close the books. So at the end of each quarter, you got to prepare the financials, and on and on and on and on. We do a lot of that. And as you can imagine, some of that is simple and some of that is complex. Over time, we've grown into more and more complex work over our history of 15 plus years. And we do that for a range of clients across a range of industries. The fact that we grew up with GE gave us the advantage of learning many industries. If we had grown up with another type of business that had one business, we would have learned that one business. We grew up with someone who had 20 unconnected industries, therefore we learned all those 20. So today we 70% of what we do is actually run things for our clients. We call that run things. About 60% of what we do is run things for our clients. 25% of what we do is technology that is connected to what we run. So if we are running finance for a client, then the underlying technology platform for finance, we often get involved in improving it, maintaining it. So it could be Oracle Finance, it could be SAP, and so on. And then about 15+% of our business is analytical services. So given the fact that we run a number of these processes, we obviously look at a lot of data, and then our ability to take that data and create insights for our clients in a world where data is becoming very, very important. It's ubiquitous. People want insights, and they want to drive intelligence using data. So those are the three segments of our business, and they obviously all feed into each other. Mm-hmm. And last point I would make is our heritage, therefore, is process. That's what we are known for. We compete with people whose heritage is technology and consulting. We obviously also have technology, but our view of the world is fix the process, then bring in technology. So we have a very biased view and a different view of the world. And the other view that we have is consulting is good, but it's so much better if after you consult and tell me what to do, can you do it for me? So our view is consulting built on a heritage of doing is so much better than just consulting.
That is true. And you know, we have seen Monitor Group fail and a lot of noise being made about the 5 forces. Where did the consultants go wrong? If they couldn't see for their own company, what are they doing for others? So yeah, and personally, I come from a consulting background as well. There are holes in consulting, which people are realizing now. Ultimately, the results matter, and consulting is all good and fine and dandy, and sometimes it does work, but oftentimes it fails. So I see. Now, you've also developed some of your own IP in the way. On the way to this process, you've developed something that is in your intellectual capital, and you can move forward for a sale on that basis.
Yeah, so over the years, as I said, we focused a lot of our attention on process. So if we take any process that a company typically has, so let's pick one. Let's pick the process of a big equipment that is made by a corporation and is sold to their client, and that equipment has a life of 20 years, and that equipment needs to be maintained. And obviously there is a warranty contract that is there between the buyer and the seller of the equipment. And let's say the equipment has 50,000 parts. So any one of those parts could fail, and so on and so forth. One we do, for example, is do the analytics that predict when the equipment is going to have a problem with a particular part, et cetera, et cetera. We then find a way to make sure that that part is available at the closest repair shop that enterprise has. And then we make sure that the client knows that the equipment may fail, let's say in a week. We make sure that the engineer who's supposed to service that equipment is available on a particular date. The part that may need the servicing gets shipped to that spot where that part may have to be used to change the part. Bringing all that together and delivering that is a big service that we end up providing for a number of our clients. Now, when you see the ecosystem of doing this, the value that it creates is keeping the equipment up always, so it never needs to be down. And some of these are such expensive equipment that if they go down for even 2 hours, it's a big cost for everyone. And two, doing it in a manner where the client satisfaction is high. The parts that are maintained across the globe to maintain that equipment is as low as possible, because you don't need to maintain massive amount of inventory, and on and on and on. Those are the kind of things that now we have morphed to.
But shouldn't that be a core competence of an organization? Why would they want to outsource that thing? Maybe they're not doing it at all. You're saying, well, we'll come and teach you how to do it.
No, so it's a great question, Nick. So here's the way I would think about it. At the end of the day, every organization and every industry has to define what their true core competency is. Why do they win in the marketplace versus their competitor? So that's one decision they have to really think hard and make. The other decision they have to make is, even in a particular space, let's take this equipment example. servicing a client and a warranty, I suspect, is an important aspect of that business. So one would say, isn't that core competency? The answer is yes, but which part of it is core competency? I would argue that the part that allows the specific spare part to be in the hands of the field engineer, then talking to the owner of the equipment and talking about what they need to do to keep it up in the future, to be able to diagnose why the problem happened so that they can give it back to design. That's core competency. That's intellectual property. Making sure the part reaches, there's predictability in when a part is going to fail. I mean, that actually is something that can be done in a shared services. You can do it for many people. You can do it at scale. And if you do it at scale, the chances are you're going to do a much better job. You're going to build intellectual property that can be used and leveraged across a broad range of equipment. So I think the world is getting more and more defining what is true core competency. And the more that happens, there are going to be organizations that have become very, very strong in some areas, and other organizations that are strong in other areas that become service providers to these organizations.
Right. So
we think the world is going there.
And so in other words, you are able to coalesce and collect disparate, disjointed sort of data, because otherwise they won't have access to it. And that becomes your IP. And at the same time, because of it, you're able to service your clients better. So in a sense, even though you started as an analytics company, more in the big data space, but actually you have embellished it tremendously to make the big data just one of the commodity offering within your entire portfolio.
So Nick, I think I would say that it would be a little unfair and I think we would be immodest if we were to say that we started off as a big data analytics company. I think we started off as a process back office company. We were fortunate to actually jump on to analytical services very early in our evolution, within the first year itself. And again, there it would be very simple analytical services. Over the years, obviously working with the same clients, we've built more and more complex analytical services. So today, clearly, we use analytics and the data that we see to build IP for our clients. We use analytics to build for ourselves so that we can take it back to clients over time. And the third is we provide analytical services with the data that our clients provide us as a separate service itself. So all three we do. And I think now it's become far more integrated, but it's still very early days, as you can imagine, of the big data revolution.
Right. I mean, the big data itself is sort of, some people say in its infancy, some people say it's going the wrong direction. I've talked to so many different people, including Professor Fader from Wharton, who thinks a little bit like me that, we're going the wrong way, but we'll get into that some other time. What I want to get from you now is, it sounds like you're obviously serving the large global clients. Do you see that this kind of service / analysis implementation can also serve the mid-market ever?
I think, Nick, there clearly is an opportunity to serve the mid-market, probably even more than the large corporations. But the mid-market companies will not be able to do this themselves. They won't have the IP, they won't have the scale, they won't have the capital, or most importantly, they won't have the management bandwidth to do this. And that's where actually the biggest difference comes in, even for large corporations. Focus. Because we do the same thing for so many people, we end up focusing on it. We have no option. And therefore, we build IP around it. An equipment manufacturer will not be able to build IP on everything. They have to pick and choose where they would want to build IP. So mid-market companies, great opportunities. The challenge is going to be, how do you access them? How do you reach them? I suspect someone will. There are going to be businesses that will be built around reaching mid-market and smaller companies around these types of things. I'm not sure necessarily it'll be the same companies that reach large corporations. It could be. But I suspect it is possible that you could have a set of companies that are focused on large corporations and another set of companies that are focused on mid and smaller companies. But clearly that's a big opportunity.
So from an entrepreneurial perspective, and you probably have reasons not to speculate or even give your expertise on that, but if there were entrepreneurs who wanted to get into this space, which is one of the reasons I'm talking with you, is what are the things they need to do? How do they need to look at things differently? Because, back in the days, a few years ago, there was the cost arbitrage, which is kind of gradually fading. And really, if you're competing with the best of the world, you need not focus on cost arbitrage. You need to give value and take your fair share. So there's Mu Sigma, there is smaller organizations, Fractal, there's a bunch of others from India particularly, but also within the US, there are companies that are wanting to get into the big data in different ways, either in terms of talent providers or in terms of IP providers or machine learning. There are different perspectives. People are coming from all over the place with different backgrounds trying to attack the same problem. Where do you see, and this is a complex question, the reason I want to lay it out to you so that you can answer it the way you deem fit. There is the idea of one group thinks that, the machine learning and machine analytics and the power that we have now will make human analytics sort of less valuable or less needed. The data can figure it out things by themselves through machine learning. And there's another group that is coming from purely technology background, big cloud servers and stuff like that. And then there's the cost arbitrage, the group that we see a lot coming from India and foreign countries outside of the US. How do you foresee this thing playing out in the future, both for mid-market and for large corporation? Having explained this, I'll make it simpler for you. For the mid-market, what do you think first?
Yeah, so Nick, like a true consultant, the answer is going to be all of the above are true, a little bit. What does that mean? It means that clearly, let me start with the one that you said is not important. We find labor arbitrage continues to be not an unimportant initial benefit that everyone wants, because what it gives to them are 3 or 4 things. It gives them immediate legitimacy. It gives them immediate investment dollars, and it gives them immediate buy-in and change management capabilities. So from a global delivery perspective, if you're capable of driving labor arbitrage for many reasons, and labor arbitrage we think about it in 2 ways. Cost of labor to do something is lesser in one domain versus another, in one geography versus another. That's one element. But there's another element, which is if someone is doing it in 100 places, and people are spread across 100 places doing it, by bringing it together, you can make that half the team. So that itself is productivity, and the combination of cost arbitrage plus productivity is a big number by itself, and it's very attractive. Then you underlay technology that makes some of the decision making that those people do automated, because you teach the machine to take those decisions. Machine learning, algorithms that are self-learning, artificial intelligence, etc. The reality is those have existed for many years. They're getting more sophisticated. But I don't think they take away what is most important, in my opinion, for real value creation, which is the third element, which is true contextual understanding of the problem that the client is solving, of the business context in which it is being solved, of the competitive environment in which it is being solved, and the trade-offs in that specific situation. So, we find most value when you can bring all 3 of these together in some proportion. In some cases, one is bigger than the other, etc. Over time, those proportions change. But anyone who says it's one at the expense of the other 2, I think is making a mistake. I think it's all 3. We find great value, for example, because we run a number of things. Our ability to build the business context for example, in that same example, if we then build models to tell the manufacturer, in your 1,000 repair plants across the globe, here are the inventory parts that you should maintain for your 50,000 parts in every one of those repair shops. Our to understand why I'm saying that in a particular part versus another is not just the mathematics, but it's also the business context of the importance of those parts and what's happened recently around those parts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Sometimes we find it very difficult to model all of that into a machine. Over time, I'm sure some of that would be. So I know it's a complex answer. And therefore, to your question on mid-market, when you serve the mid-market, what are they least capable of being able to do? Global delivery, no chance. Very tough for a mid-market client to say, I'm going to set up something in Chile, or I'm going to set up something in Brazil. Impossible. Second, technology. Technology is actually possible. They could buy technology. They could, these days on the cloud, you pay by the drink. So that's the easier part. So as technology automation rolls in, but here's the problem with technology. Our view is that technology comes in only after you've fixed your process and the data is clean. We have a saying in the company, it is better to run a manual, unautomated process that produces defects at a certain rate. Let's say it produces 50% defect rate. So which means you have a 50% chance that you're right and you have 50% chance that you're wrong. Then you go and automate it without fixing the process. You have done three things. You've spent money, which is fine. As long as the benefit is there, that's good, not a problem, on the technology. Second, you've now systematically made sure that defects get created without randomness, which means you've systematically ensured that you will always have 50% defect rates. Whereas at least in the past, there were times when there were no defects. It was random. So our view is that fix the process before you implement the technology, reduce the defects, then you implement the technology. And I think mid-market companies struggle with that.
Right, and this reminds me of a favorite quote of mine that again comes from India, which talks about get rid of the fish, don't bother with the deodorant, because if you're not going to get rid of the fish, that thing will never go away.
Great one. I've never heard of that one.
Yeah, actually, it's Swami Parthasarthi, whom I read a lot, and I've met with him, have had the opportunity of meeting with him one time. He's an incredible person. But he's written some books, and I really like that stuff. So this is great. This is wonderful. They're very, very helpful. It sheds a certain light. Now, I'll give you an example of an organization which you know of very well, but I won't name it. But one of the large IT technology hardware producers. And they've got over 250,000 models that they recalibrate every quarter. I mean, this is mind-boggling to me. I come from a variety of backgrounds, but independent of where a person comes from, if you know anything about models, that's a huge, massive number. Humans couldn't possibly do that. So what do you say to that?
So great problem to have for a company like us, right? Because we thrive in such situations. The reality is actually for some time, the world has been going there. In financial services, regulatory requirements are forcing people to revisit all models, to recast all models, to prepare stress tests of all their portfolios and all their products across all their businesses across the globe. And that is a multiplier that's massive. So I'm not surprised with the 250,000 number. So there are two ways that most people think about this as they sit back and think about it. One is, what do I do today? Because I have to solve it today. And then what do I do in the long run? Because I can't solve it the same way in the long run. So there is a tactical today answer and there is a long run answer. So the tactical today answer is, I've got to attack and create the capacity to be able to do that 250,000 times every quarter. Okay, so how are you going to do that and how much is it going to cost you? Well, I'm going to try and find a way to do that quickly, and I'm going to try and do that at the lowest cost possible. That's why live arbitrage does still become important. Capacity still becomes important, because part of this trend is also long-term demographics that are playing out. Incredible long-term demographics that have no chance of changing for decades going forward that are playing out. And some years back there was this Economist article on the war for talent, And then the global financial crisis hit, and people were saying there's no war for talent. My view is that the war for talent has always been there, is still there. When you really want people of a certain domain in a certain place, you still don't get them. And it's a question of 1 or 2% GDP growth, and all of a sudden the war for talent will become acute because the labor pool with the right capabilities is still very thin. So there's a whole education mapping to needs problem that we all know exists.